Hi guys, welcome back for episode number 97 of the weekly playback. Now, I know I said in the last video that I would talk about Obsession today, but I'm actually going to wait until next week now because I started shooting this video a lot later than anticipated, and at 2 p.m., which is like in an hour and a half, I need to go and meet some people to situate the third colony. But I will give an update on the third cat colony in this video as well, and I want to do Obsession justice, so I'm going to actually save it for the next video. So I know I always say, oh, so this is going to be a really short video, and then it ends up not being a short video, but I do think that this video will be my shortest video yet. So yeah, so we'll see. So let's just get into the two games I will talk about in this video. Let's talk about Sail. Sail is a 2023 game designed by Akiyama Koryo and Kuzu Yusai, and the art is done by my favorite board game artist, Weberson Santiago, and it's published by All Play Games. This is a two-player trick-taking game. This is a copy that I purchased on my own, and I also purchased all of the upgraded components on my own, but I have received review copies from this publisher for other games. So this is a trick-taking game that actually has a board, and I'll be throwing up a picture. So you're going to assemble the board. So the board pieces look like this, and you'll be assembling it from start to finish. And you'll see that there's like various diamond shapes on it, and on the diamond shapes you're going to be putting different things depending on which scenario you are playing. So this game comes with scenarios, and you will pick a scenario and then you will set it up according to the scenario. So it goes from easy to more difficult. So I played scenario 1 twice. So scenario 1, you can see that you're going to be starting here and you're going to end here. But if you look at the much more difficult scenarios, you'll be starting at the very beginning and you'll need to reach the very end in the same number of rounds with the same kind of number, you know, number of cards and all of that. So it's going to get more difficult as the scenario numbers increase. So you're going to be placing different kinds of obstructions onto this board. So you'll be placing island pieces, and again, these are the upgraded components. The non-upgraded components are just going to be like little diamond cardboard pieces that you'll be placing out. So you're going to be placing islands, and you're going to be placing kraken tentacles. So you definitely want to try to avoid the kraken tentacles and the islands if possible. Definitely the kraken tentacles, because you will acquire damage if you run into that. And then there's also going to be these storm clouds. So you will need to pass the storm clouds by certain rounds in order to progress. And you're going to have, like, these are some upgraded components. So there's like the Kraken marker, which will move along here, which will determine like how much damage you take and so on. And there's just some other pieces to keep track of how many tricks you win, and the round tracker. So this is a board that will be between the two players. So I'll be on one side and the other player will be on the other side. And you'll be keeping track of the round, and you'll be keeping track of how many tricks you win. And over here, there's going to be player cards between the players, so each person will have their own special ability. So there are different ability cards that you can use, and then you will have a discard pile for the tricks that you've won, and then of course there's going to be a player deck. So I'll get into all of it. So there are 3 different suits in this game. So there's this bluish color, this grayish color, and this green color. So you are going to remove all the numbered 1 and 2 cards and shuffle them and place them onto the Kraken card, which is then going to form the Kraken deck. And that will basically give you, the Kraken deck is from where you will draw cards when you have to take damage and stuff. And I'll explain what all of that means. So there's different symbols on the cards. So after removing all the 1s and 2s, you're then going to shuffle all the cards and give 9 cards to each player. And then the remaining cards will go into the player deck. And the player deck will help to give damage to the Kraken at certain points, and I'll explain how you do that. So the different symbols, so basically in this trick-taking game, you are going to have a person who is starting the trick, and so for the round, at the beginning of the round, you're going to see where the round tracker is, and the person that the round tracker is closer to, they will start the trick in that round. And then that round ends once someone has won 4 tricks, and then you will go to the next round. But once the round begins, whoever has won the trick will lead the next trick. So similar to, you know, all trick-taking games, you are trying to follow the suit. You have to follow the suit if you can, and the higher number will win. But in this game, you are trying to match up symbols, various symbols on the various cards, so that you can move your ship along and hopefully deal damage to the Kraken. So let me just show you the player aids. So for example, when you match up certain symbols, you will get to take certain actions. So if you have 2 wheels, that means you will get to move the ship in the direction of the player who won that trick. So what that means is, for example, like let's suppose the ship was here. You will move it either in this direction if the player who won the trick was in that direction, or in this direction if the player who won the trick was in this direction. You won't go exactly straight unless you have another combination of symbols, which we'll get to in a minute. If you have a combination of a wheel and a kraken fin, then that will allow you to move, but you will also take damage from the kraken. And then if you have 2 of these cards with these symbols, so if you have 2 cards that match like that, so for example, like let's suppose we had both of these, then you will also get to move, but you will take 2 damage. If you have this symbol plus a cannon, and let me find the cannon, that means you will get to place a card underneath the Kraken deck, and that's really helpful. You definitely want to place cards underneath the Kraken deck if you can. If you have 2 cannons, so let's see, so like let's suppose you have 2 cannons, so then you will get to issue damage to the Kraken, which is really good. Now if you have 2 whale fins, which is not going to happen very often, that's when you get to move forward, like from here to here instead of from here to here or here to here. So 2 whale fins will allow you to move directly 1 space forward, so it's getting you farther along, but that's more difficult to achieve because the whale fins only appear on the number 9 card in each suit. So that's the only way they appear. So the only way you can end up playing a whale fin card and having those match up is if one player had run out of a certain suit and then they were able to play a matching whale fin with the other whale tail with the other player. So the whale tails are definitely harder to get for you to move forward. When you take damage, you are basically going to remove cards from the Kraken deck, and that will bring you closer and closer to game end. So whenever the Kraken damages the ship, move the top card of the Kraken deck to the discard pile. If this would cause you to move the Kraken card, then move the Kraken meeple 1 space clockwise and place the Kraken card at the bottom of the Kraken deck. If the Kraken card is ever the only card in the Kraken deck, the game is over and the players lose. So that's why I said it's really helpful for you when you get that one symbol, that one combination that will allow you to place cards into the Kraken deck. So this combination, the cannon plus these 2 symbols, will allow you to place cards underneath the Kraken deck, which you definitely want to do to try to help prolong the game. So basically, each player is going to play a card from their hand of 9 cards, and then whoever wins the trick, if the matching symbols, if you have matching symbols or some combination of symbols that will allow you to take an action, then it usually depends on who won that trick, and you will move the ship in that direction or whatever. So you're basically trying to avoid these obstacles and get through to the end. And you need to pass the storms by certain rounds. So by the, I believe it's by the end of the 3rd round, you need to have passed the first storm, and by the end of the 4th round, by the end of the 2nd round, I can't remember exactly how that works. The placing of that is a little bit weird. Let me just double check. Storms. Storms. I can't remember, but it tells you when you need to, oh yeah, at the end of round 2, the ship is, so you'll lose if at the end of round 2, the ship is not completely past the first storm. And you'll lose if at the end of round 4, the ship is not completely past the 2nd storm. So there are going to be storms. So you need to make sure you've passed the storms by the end of round 2 and the end of rounds 4, or else you will lose. So there are going to be 2 storms. And again, there will have been hopefully a picture for you to see. So yeah, so you're basically playing cards from your hand and 1 card at a time, and then seeing who won the trick and then resolving it. And you're also moving up your own trick marker to keep track of how many tricks you've won, because after a player has won the 4th trick, you will start the next round. And at the end of the round, you are also going to So the round ends when one player wins the fourth trick. Then the Kraken damages the ship a number of times equal to the number under the Kraken tracker meeple. So again, you're keeping track of the numbers of the Kraken cards here. So again, that would move if you had ever revealed the Kraken card. So again, that's why it's really important to try to get that combination that will add more and more cards to the Kraken deck. So you're going to take a number of damage equal to the number of times underneath the Kraken tracker meeple. Then you will advance the round tracker disc, and then you reset the trick cubes to 0. You shuffle the player deck and the discarded cards. Now the discarded cards will include any cards that you had taken from damage from the Kraken. So that will include the number 1s and 2s that you had previously shuffled for the Kraken deck. So now you will have those cards in your hand as well, possibly, because some cards will not end up in your hand. So some cards will end up in what's the player deck. So the player deck is what you will use when you give damage to the Kraken. So anytime you have 2 cannons, you will reveal the top card from the player deck, and that will tell you what you get to do. So if you reveal a steering wheel, you will get to move the ship forward and towards the player who won the trick. If you reveal a steering wheel and the Kraken tentacle, then you will place that card at the bottom of the Kraken deck. If you reveal a whale tail, you will move the ship straight forward 1 space. If you reveal a cannon, you will flip another card. So when you have 2 cannons that you played on a trick, then you get to reveal a card and see what you get to do. So it's not necessary, it's not like always, going to be that you actually damage the Kraken that way, but it might allow you to move, or it might allow you to damage the Kraken. So that's helpful, or add a deck to the Kraken deck, which is helpful. So it's a really cool game. I really enjoy it. I like the aspect of having a trick-taking game with also having an objective to, meet, where you're trying to get your ship to the end. We played this game twice and we lost both times, and we played scenario 1. The rulebook does say that you're not supposed to talk. So like once you've gotten your cards, and I forgot to mention, before you start, you will look at your cards, and each player will give 1 card from their hand to the other player. So the way we did it, we would always look at which cards we had the most of and give 1 of those suit cards to the other player, so that hopefully we could, match suit and have a trick. But again, just because you have the same colored cards doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get to do something, because if you have certain symbols that don't do anything, then you won't get to do anything. So for example, if you match a cannon to a steering wheel, that's nothing. So someone might still win a trick if you have a cannon and a steering wheel, but nothing is going to happen. So, and you'll just end up advancing your cube. And so that's really not beneficial. You really want stuff to happen, because you really need to advance along the board, get around those Kraken tentacles, and hopefully reach the end. So I would not recommend this game for people who are not familiar with basic trick-taking concepts, because it can be quite challenging, I think, for a player if they don't understand the kind of reasonings behind why a certain player might have played a certain card. So we did kind of cheat a little bit in which we talked, because my opponent wasn't as familiar with trick-taking games as I was. So for example, he played a card, and then I played a card, and then the next round he played a certain card, and I was like, I was trying to indicate to him, I played a non-matching card in the last round, so that should kind of give you a clue that I am out of that suit. So, now you're playing this card, and, so I would kind of have to try to explain to him, what certain things mean, because he wasn't as familiar with trick-taking games. And in a game where you're not only having the basic trick-taking concepts of matching the lead suit, but also trying to get the symbol combinations that you need, I do think that this game is geared towards more experienced trick-taking players. So I would recommend this for players who really enjoy trick-taking games, want something that is more challenging, because this is definitely a more challenging trick-taking game, and understand the trick-taking concepts really well. So it's a really fantastic trick-taking game, but again, I definitely think it's geared towards more experienced trick-taking players. Otherwise, I would say it's a really fantastic game. Absolutely loved it, and I'm definitely going to play this again, I hope. I hope I will find, someone I can play this with over and over again, because I would like to win at some point and try the more and more difficult scenarios as we progress. So I think that that would be really fun if I could find someone who is an experienced trick taker and just, it's kind of almost like a campaign game, because it comes with all these different scenarios. So you'll try to get, you'll try to achieve, like, win the more and more difficult scenarios as you get better and more skilled at this game. Of course, there is an element of luck, because there has to be. Like, if you always had the same cards in your hand, then you would be able to puzzle out exactly which cards you need to play, when you need to play them in order to do certain things. So of course there's going to be that element of luck, like which cards you're dealt, and it's going to create, variability from game to game. So it's extremely necessary in a trick-taking game, because otherwise you would be able to map out exactly what you need to do if you got all the same cards all the time, like the same suits and the same numbers, and that would be no fun. So games like this definitely need luck, in which your hand might really suck, and you might actually just really lose the game very badly because your hand totally sucked. But that's part of the charm of trick-taking games. So yeah, so I definitely recommend Sail if you love trick-taking games and you are an experienced trick taker. And it is a 2-player game though, so keep that in mind, but it is such a cool game. Like, having a board, having stuff to move in a trick-taking game, like, I think that's a pretty cool concept. Like, I don't think that there's many other trick-taking games out there that are like that. If you know of any, let me know, but highly recommend. So let's move on. Let's talk about QE. QE is a 2019 game published by Allplay, designed by Gavin Birnbaum, and the art is done by Anja Gavril, and it's for 3 to 5 players. I do not own this game, but I played it recently, so I'll talk about it and hopefully throw up some pictures. So I'm just actually going to read the description. So QE stands for quantitative easing. So you are playing the role of a central bank, so you're going to bid on different sized companies to accumulate various levels of victory points. The amount you bid is unlimited, since you are a central bank and you own the printing press. After the initial open bid by the lead player, the other players bid in secret. After the 16 companies have been bailed out, bonus victory points are awarded for a company's sets of nationalization, monopolization, and diversification. So basically, each person is representing a different central bank. So each person represents a different country. So for example, I was Japan in the 5-player game I played. Then there was also China, there was the UK, there was the US, and there was the European Union. So each person represents a different nation or group of nations, for example, the European Union or the United Kingdom, and each person is going to be trying to get companies that belong to their own nation, because that will help you to get more points. So each turn in a round, so I believe that there were 3 rounds in the game, in the 5-player game I played, and in the beginning of each turn, the lead bidder is going to flip over which company that all the other countries and banks are going to be bidding on, including them. They will start the opening bid. So the opening bid is public knowledge. So let's suppose they write 2 million. Now we know, okay, if we want to win that company, we have to bid 2,000,001 or over. So basically, we're all going to have secret bids. Then they're going to look at the secret bids and determine who the winner is based on the highest bidder. And then they're going to write that number on the back of that company tile and give that tile to the winner. They're going to keep their winning bid secret. So you don't know what the winning bid was. And that's really important, because at the end of the game, the player who spent the most money, because again, your money is unlimited, is going to lose. And that just so happened to be me. It's really, I feel like the opening bidder in the starting round is at an advantageous point, because they kind of get to set the tone for the game. And winning bids in the first round I found is really important, which I did not do. I didn't win any bids in the first round. And it's really important because as the rounds go on, as the turns go on, the bids are going to get higher and higher as other players are trying to when they're the lead bidders, trying to get other players to bid a lot more, so that hopefully they don't end up as the player who bid the most on all of their companies, who spent the most, and will not be able to be in the running to win the game. So, you know, you're going to look at who has the most points, but the person who spent the most money is going to get thrown out and not even get to determine whether or not they won. Even if they ended up having the most points, too bad. If you spent the most money, then it's, you know, too bad, you lost. So basically you're going to do this for 3 rounds. You will have a lead bidder for each company, you know, and then the other players bid secretly. And then you are trying to diversify. So there's different kinds of companies. There's like agriculture, there's like industry, like there's just different kinds of companies that you can try to bid on. So each thing that you bid on is going to show what country it belongs to, how many victory points it's worth, and what industry like it belongs to, whether it's science, government, agriculture, so on. So it has a different symbol. And you are trying to diversify. If you can diversify, you will get more points. And you will also get more points if you have more of a certain type of industry. So like if you have, like, for example, 3 agriculture, that will be worth more points. But diversification is also important. It's also important for you to get companies that belong to your own country, because that will help you to get more points as well. So, you know, as these companies are being, you know, shown and you're bidding on them, it gets more and more difficult, because, like, you know, you might really need something because it helps you to diversify or helps you to get more of a certain type of industry, or it belongs to your country. But, you know, you're in the middle of like the 2nd round and people's bids, you know, starting bids are really high because they're trying to get other people to bid really high so that they don't end up being the highest, the person who spent the most money at the end of the game. It's a really interesting bidding game. So I would say check it out if that sounds like something you're interested in. I really did enjoy it. I really suck at it. I know I've played this game once before. I played it once like a couple years ago, and I remember I was also at that time the person who spent the most money. So I really, really suck at this game. And I also played like a different variation of this game. I believe it was called Magic Money. So it's like a different kind of like game just like this, but with dragons instead of companies. So yeah, so, and again, when I played that, I also spent the most money. So I really suck at this game. So if anyone has tips on how to not spend the most money and like what I should be focusing on, that would be very helpful. So yeah, but it was a fun game. And my question of the week is going to relate to an embarrassing moment I had while playing this game, but I'll get to that later in the video. So yeah, so that was Quantitative Easing, which is a fun game, and, you know, yeah, so check it out. I think, you know, I think it's one of those games that will probably be more fun with more players, though. I don't know what the minimum player count was again. Let me just double check. The minimum player count is 3. So I'm not sure how much fun it would be with 3 players, but definitely at 5 players it was fun. So we played at the maximum player count. So yeah, highly recommend this game, and it's rated 7.4 on BGG. So, you know, people think highly of it. We had some discussions about whether there's any way to break this game. Apparently Tom Vassell really loves this game and has said that you just cannot break this game. So I'd be interested in hearing people's thoughts on that. And it's really interesting because the opening bid that someone can make can be any number, and you have an unlimited amount of money. So I think whoever the first player is in the game, the first person who starts with the leading bid, they kind of set the tone for the game. Because if you are starting with something in the millions, then the other players are also going to stay in the millions, because you don't want like a 2 million bid on something and then like a $5 bid on something else. Like, that's just crazy, right? So the first player to start the bidding is definitely going to set the tone for the game in terms of how much money you're spending. So in our game, we were in the millions, and I ended up spending over $18 million. So I got kicked out of the running for winning, but I didn't have the highest points anyway. I think I had like the 2nd or 3rd highest points. So it's fine. So I was happy. Like, if I had had the most points, but I got kicked out because I spent the most money, then that would have hurt more. So that would have been you know, pretty bad. That would have made me feel bad. Like, oh, I could have won if I didn't spend the most money. So anyway, so that is QE. So check it out. So let's move on. So another game I played again recently is Grand Austria Hotel. So I talked about this game at length in the last video, so I'm not going to go into too much detail in this video, but I got to play a 4-player game of Grand Austria Hotel this time. The last time I played it was a 3-player game, and this time, because I knew how important it was to get you know, along on the Emperor track, I ended up winning. So I won this game, which I was really proud about. I was really happy. So this game went really well for me. I managed to get 2 of the first place objectives. So 15 points for 2 of the objectives. One objective was like really impossible. Like one objective was the first person to complete 6 groupings of rooms. Do not know how that is possible in a game. Like, I think you just do not have enough turns to complete 6 groups of rooms. Not just, you know, we're talking about groups. So a group could have anywhere between 1 door or 4 doors in it. So how on earth do you complete 6 groups of rooms when you also have the adjacency requirement and stuff like that? I really don't know. If anyone is watching this and has ever completed that objective, I would be really impressed. So I completed 2 of the objectives in the first place. I managed to get a card, an employee card, which gave me end game points, which was really helpful. I had quite a bit of money left over in the end, which was also helpful. I had some resources left over in the end, which was helpful. So yeah, so I was really proud of the last play that I had of this game. So it is very important to get up on the Emperor track. And I don't know if I mentioned this in the last game, but of course there's an element of luck, right? So there's going to be an element of luck of which cards you are dealt in the beginning of the game and so on, and which cards just come up and which cards are available for you to get. So, you know, there is an element of luck, but in a game like this, that's expected, and it's, you know, it makes the game fun. So each game is going to be a little bit different. So yeah, so I really love this game, and I'm glad that I got to play it a second time so quickly after the first time I played this game. So yeah, so that was really fun. And yeah, so keep in mind that the Emperor track is important, and that will give you a reward if you are in the gold section as well, which is important as well. So yeah, so that was fun to play again. So let's move on. So let's talk about stuff that I have received or am backing. So currently I'm still just backing the Asia collection, which ends pretty soon from Lemery Games. So I'm not going to talk too much in detail about that because, again, I'm pressed for time here. And in terms of stuff I received, I actually did receive a review copy for a game that's coming out on Kickstarter. Well, the expansion is coming out on Kickstarter, but I'm not going to show it because I'll just end up showing it in the next video after I've played it. And that is Austria. So Austria is coming back to Kickstarter because they have a new expansion which is called Pirates. I've actually never played the base game before, so my plan is probably just to play the base game first, and then if my friends are interested in playing with the expansion, we'll do that as well. But I'm not creating an overview video for it, but they just did send me the game to check out for their campaign and talk about it, so I'm looking forward to playing that. I did purchase a game, so I actually purchased Get On Board, Paris and Roma. I've had my eyes on this for a really long time, so I spent my store credit at Millennium Games in order to purchase this. So I'm super excited to play this, and it has a solo mode. I don't think its predecessor had a solo mode, actually, if I'm remembering correctly. So it is a flip and write game. So, you know, you have a player sheet and you have a board. So apparently the Rome side is for solo mode and 2 or 3 players. And then if you're playing at 4 or 5 players, that's when you get to use the Paris side. So here is the Paris side. So that is a little bit disappointing because I thought, you know, you would get to use either side depending on what you're in the mood for. But no, you have to choose a certain side based on player count. And here are the various track pieces and so on, and then the various ticket cards, and it comes with just some very basic pencils. So yeah, I am really looking forward to playing this. I was like, you know, really, you know, mulling over it while I was at the game store. Like, should I buy it? Should I not? I don't know. So I've read some reviews. Some people were like, this is way better than the predecessor, while others were like, no, the predecessor is better. So it's just really interesting how, you know, people's opinions can differ so much on the same game, right? So in the end, you have to just play it yourself and decide for yourself whether or not you think it's better than the predecessor. So yeah, but I do really like these 2 cities. So I'm super excited to play this. I just absolutely love the artwork. It's really nice. Now this is not a game, but I received this. So a friend of mine who also, I guess, maybe watches my content, I don't know if he does, but Game Foundry. So he makes 3D printed inserts for games. He actually, I got my Cabbage, my Mr. Cabbage Head's Garden insert from him, which is amazing. So if you really love that game as much as I do, highly recommend that insert because it's so amazing, and it also holds sleeve cards. So he made this 3D printed elephant for me, which is amazing. I don't know if you can see it, but it's actually raised but that is so freaking cool. So he just sent that to me because he was testing out these 3D prints, and he made an elephant, and he's like, I don't know who would appreciate an elephant as much as you would. So that was really nice. So yeah, so it's just really nice to receive this 3D printed elephant. I might even get it framed and then just hang it up. It's really nice. I just really like that. So yeah, so let's move on because, you know, as I said, I'm pressed for time. So let's just quickly talk about the cat colony. So I did go to the 3rd colony and I assembled the small shelters and the big shelter, and I'll put up a picture of how I placed them. But I'm actually going to be meeting some people shortly to redo the whole setup, because apparently you should not have the shelter so close to the food. And we've been trying to keep an eye on where these cats actually go and where they come from. I've only seen cats there once while driving by at nighttime. I've never seen cats there in the daytime, but we know that there are cats. We're going to be setting up cameras to try to get like a visual of how many cats, who comes to eat the food, and you know, that way we'll be able to kind of get an estimate of how many cats we need to trap and spay and neuter and so on. So I'm going to be going there shortly to help do the setup. So we need to keep the shelters a bit away from the food, and we're just going to try to make the area a bit more manageable for us. Right now it's really hard for me because it's actually underneath a tree, and I have to squat every time I'm feeding them and replacing their food and their water. And I guess I need to get in shape because squatting for that long is pretty hard for me. And you know, at a certain point my legs just start burning and I'm like, okay, I really need to stand. So yeah, so hopefully the place where we end up putting their food bowls and their shelters will not be an area where I need to squat, because that gets a little bit hard when you're doing it for long periods of time. But I should really start doing yoga on a regular basis so that I can get back in shape and be able to do that. So yeah, so I'm going to be going shortly for that. And I did receive a donation from this fan of my channel, a friend, I guess I should say. Fan sounds weird. I always feel weird saying fan. Richard, so thank you so much, Richard, for your donation. I will be using that to purchase another small shelter, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I know that, you know, no one has to make donations, so when you do, it's just, you know, it means so much to me, and it really helps the cats that I'm, you know, trying my best to take care of. So thank you so much. So yeah, so let's move on from the cat update, and hopefully in the next video I'll show you the new setup for the cats and, you know, and all of that. Palestine, no new updates on Palestine. The genocide is still happening. No one is, you know, the big names in the industry are still super quiet about that. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that since I am pressed for time. But, you know, I guess that's your update. Still, you know, people are still silent and nothing is happening, but the genocide is still going on. Oh, Israel did bomb Syria. So in addition to Lebanon, they have started bombing Syria. So yeah, so there is that update. You know, they're really trying to turn this into a regional war. And you would think that with everything that Israel is doing, that people in the board game industry would be more vocal about it, but no, especially because it actually is affecting the board game industry. Like I've seen a number of updates now say, oh, shipping is affected by the situation in the Red Sea, the situation in the Red Sea. Like, they don't want to come out and say it's affected by the genocide, by what's happening, by the Houthis trying to stop Israeli ships from, you know, going through and stuff like that. No, it's the situation in the Red Sea. No one's going to actually refer to it as a genocide. So yeah, so it is affecting the board game industry, but all the big names in the industry are still dead silent about it. So that is your update on Palestine this week. So let's move on to the question of the week. So I talked about the game quantitative easing earlier in this video and explained a little bit about how that game works. So the question of the week, I'll give you my story, but I'll tell you what the question of the week is. The question of the week is, what is one of your most embarrassing board game moments? So, you know, it can be fun or it can just be really cringy. I don't know, you know, or you might not want to share at all, but I'll share mine with you now, since now I think that this has become my most embarrassing board game moment now. So we were playing quantitative easing. So it was a 5-player game. So I was sitting in one seat, and next to me was Karen, and across from Karen was her husband Bruce, and across from me was Jeff. So these are people that I typically game with. So these are people who I know really well and game with all the time, right? And then between me and Jeff at the end of the table was this new person. So it was my first time meeting him. It was all of our first times meeting him, and his name is Kelly. So maybe he's Irish or something. I don't know, because I know some people in the UK and Ireland have names that can be kind of like unisex, like Ashley and stuff like that. So this person's name was Kelly. So he introduced himself, and we all all said, "Hi, Kelly," and introduced ourselves. And then we started playing. And throughout the game, as I mentioned earlier in my explanation of QE, you're always going to have a person who is like the lead bidder, and they're opening up the bidding for a certain company, and then everyone else bids. And throughout the game, you know, I would hear Bruce like make comments about the, you know, who's in the lead or who's like winning and this and that, like just, you know, whatever. And so I can't recall having ever heard him say my name, but occasionally he would say Kelly this, Kelly that. And so at one point I was the person who opened up the bid, and then we did the whole turn, and then it was supposed to be Kelly's turn. And you know, this is like more than halfway through the game, and I'd heard him say, you know, Bruce mentioned the name Kelly a few times, and he would make comments like, "Oh, Kelly is in the lead, Kelly is in the driver's seat," and this and that. You know, he would kind of give commentary throughout the game. And this whole time I completely forgot what Kelly's name was, and this whole time I thought Bruce was talking about me and that somehow he was just making a joke about what my name was. I don't know what was going through my mind that I thought this. So finally, this is like towards the end of the game, and you know, I had just finished my turn as the lead bidder, and Bruce says, "Oh, Kelly is in the driver's seat." And finally I look at Bruce and I'm like, "Who's Kelly? Why do you keep on calling me Kelly?" and then Bruce and his wife started laughing so badly. And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "What is a joke? Like, why are you calling me Kelly?" Like in my mind, I'm like thinking that this is some kind of a joke. Like, why are they calling me Kelly? Like every time I finish my turn and Bruce is like, "Oh, Kelly's in the driver's seat." And I'm like, what? Like, it didn't even occur to me that driver's seat meant like the lead bidder, like the person who's opening up the bidding. So number one, that should have been a clue that he wasn't talking about me when he said, "Oh, Kelly's in the driver's seat." But in my mind, I was also thinking that driver's seat meant, oh, the person who's winning. And at that point, I had won a certain number of companies. Of course, they didn't know that I had spent a shit ton of money on them, and I was actually losing because I spent the most money in this game. But in my mind, I was thinking, okay, he's calling me Kelly for some reason, and he thinks that I'm winning this game, which is really weird because like I lose every game, right? So like I'm someone who loses games a lot. So after I said to him like, "Who's Kelly and why do you keep on calling me Kelly?" and like the three of them started laughing hysterically, and then Bruce points over, he's like, "That's Kelly," and then I look over and I'm like, "Oh shit, like yeah, that person's name is Kelly." So he wasn't referring to me this whole time. Every time he said the name Kelly, like it was just so embarrassing, and Bruce said that my face turned really red, which I can imagine. So yeah, so that was a really embarrassing moment. I do not know what was going through my mind that I thought for some reason he kept on calling me Kelly, and I just happened to forget this new person's name. So that was really funny and really embarrassing. And then the rest of the night when we were playing Grand Austria Hotel and it would be my turn, they'd be like, "Oh, it's Kelly's turn now." So I guess now I'm Kelly for, you know, our game nights from now on because of that one funny moment. So that was a really embarrassing game moment. I am really bad with names. I should have tried to retain this new person's name a bit better, but I'm just really terrible with names. Like a few years ago when I was at UKGE, I met one of my friends from Twitter and we even played a game together. And then we just so happened to be on the same train going back to London and in the same row. So like I was sitting by the window in my row and he was sitting by the window in his row. So we had like two people between us, right? And at a certain point I decided, oh, you know what? I should ask him if he wants to have dinner with me. So I start yelling his name and I'm like, "Hey, Paul, and I just can't get his attention. So I'm like leaning over the person next to me and I like tap, reach really far over and I like tap to the person next to Paul and I'm like, "Oh, sorry, could you get my friend Paul?" And then they tap him and then he looks over at me. I'm like, "Oh, hey Paul, would you like to join me for dinner?" And he's like, "Oh no, sorry, I can't, like I have another train to catch as soon as I get to London." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's okay, you know." And then like we chatted a little bit after we got off the train, and then when I got home I realized his name wasn't even Paul, it was Mark, and we'd exchanged messages on Twitter. We had played a game earlier that day, and yeah, I'd been calling him Paul on the train, which is why I couldn't get his attention. And then I called him Paul to his face when I was trying to, arrange dinner with him. So yeah, so I'm really bad with names and I need to try to be better with names. So please share your most embarrassing game night moment with me. It can be really cringy, it could be really funny. I would just love to know if you've had any similar experiences. And hopefully in the next video, I will make sure I have enough time to talk about my all-time favorite game, Obsession, and do it justice. So until then, bye.